The original vision, when we were writing the script, was to shoot this hand out of a potato gun, but we don't have a potato gun.
We've lost the plot.
Let me know when you're ready.
Okay. Rolling. That looked good. That was really good.
We got soda.
God, I wish we should have gotten more soda.
Yeah, just a tiny...
Did I mention we have soda?
Good evening, sir. Have you heard the good news?
You're holding it in an interesting spot.
I said, have you heard the good news?
Shaffer and I just finished making our first proper short film together. We've worked together a ton on client projects and helping each other out with our own things, but we've always wanted to write and direct something together, and this was our first attempt at that. I'm super happy with the result, and I just wanted to share a few insights behind the scenes and a few lessons that can be learned from this film. Anytime you're brainstorming, I think it's so important to not worry about being realistic, to not judge the ideas for how good or bad they are, or how practical they are, but to just let the ideas flow. And that is something Shaffer is so good at, and it's so fun brainstorming with him because he will just accept any idea you have and bounce ideas back off of it. He'll throw his own ideas. It's a very safe space to be in brainstorming, and I think that's the best way to go about it. So as this idea formed of having a guy with stretchy arms that fill an entire room, we were able to play off of that idea without worrying about how we would achieve it and how practical it was. We just loved the concept, so we kept riffing off of that concept. And once that idea had developed more and more, it was clear, like, okay, this is what we want to do. We love this idea. Now let's worry about how to actually make it happen. And in our case, we had essentially no budget at all for this film, so that meant any VFX was ruled out because it would be far too expensive, and neither of us had any interest in using AI, so we knew we had to do it practically. So to achieve the effect, we had considered buying a bunch of different sweatshirts from thrift stores and cutting off the arms to all of them, and then adding Velcro so that there was all these segments of sleeve that we could lengthen and shorten as we were shooting. Thankfully, we didn't have to do that. Tiffany came to the rescue and suggested making 3 different sweatshirts, a regular length one, a medium length one, and a super long length one. That way the actor could just swap between the sweaters as we're filming. She also sewed this inner arm sleeve, which is what is actually stuffed with stuffing, and that way the fabric would drape more naturally around that inner sleeve. So yeah, I really don't know what we would have done without her, because these sweaters were the centerpiece of the entire film. So she really saved us with that. And on top of that, she also has a lot of experience working with puppets. She's worked on Sesame Street. So she suggested this really cool idea of making an auxiliary sleeve where there's essentially a separate entrance for someone to insert their hand into an extra long sleeve and then sort of be a puppeteer of that sleeve. So that's how we achieved this baseball catching shot. We had considered needing like a green screen morph suit for that person, but eventually decided that since masking tools have become so good and so easy to use, that as long as we got a clean slate of the background, it wouldn't be hard to mask out the puppeteer. And honestly, now in retrospect, I kind of wish we would have used that sleeve more often. I'm not exactly sure why we didn't. We know we needed it for the baseball catching scene, but for so many of the other shots in the climax of this film, we mostly just ended up using the plastic hand in the sleeve with a C-stand arm to give it rigidity. But even with both of those, even with the puppet sleeve and the rigid plastic hand sleeve. One of our biggest challenges in both filming and editing was still just conveying to the viewer that the character's arm was actively lengthening. So for that baseball scene, we tried doing a POV type shot where it just shows the baseball glove slowly moving towards the window, and it just it just did not work out. It just looked like a guy filming their own hand walking towards the window. So what we realized and what we eventually landed on is that we could instead just rely on sound design and the viewer's imagination to achieve the same effect.
Dad, come play catch.
Okay, be right there.
And I think that kind of helps land the joke even better of when you do finally see just the mitt and the long arm out the window. So that was really a big lesson from this process, is that when you can't convey something directly through visuals, you can really rely heavily upon sound design and allow the viewer's imagination to create the visual that you weren't able to create practically. Sound design is so powerful in that regard, and the exact same applies to music. In the final scene, when the character is recognizing what he's done, recognizing how big of a mistake he's made by stretching out his arms this far, we really needed to land emotionally that sense of regret and that sense of looking back on how good he had it before. And for that scene, Shaffer just found the perfect song on Music Bed that has this eerie sound effect while also having some organ music. It really perfectly captures this emotion that we're trying to land, in that the character is recognizing that it was the inconvenience of life, it was the effort that life required that actually was the sweetest part. So yeah, sound effects and music both carry such a strong responsibility in films. And if you've watched this channel for a while, you already know my favorite place to get music for my films, and now that same place offers more than just music. For the longest time, I've relied on Music Bed as my go-to for finding music for my films, because I know I can always count on their obsessive curation and their high standards for music. And that same level of curation is now available with their premium sound effects. They haven't just thrown together a random library of sounds, but rather it's a curated collection of sounds specifically crafted by exclusive artists like Mark Mangini, the sound designer for Dune and Fury Road, and Richard King, the sound editor and designer for Oppenheimer, both of whom have received Academy Awards for their work. This high level of curation means that I never feel like I'm wasting my time on Music Bed. I'm either able to find exactly what I need immediately, or I'm spending more time on the platform because I'm using it as a source of inspiration when I feel stuck. Sound is far too important to ignore and far too important to settle for anything but the best. Ditch the generic royalty-free stuff and switch to Music Bed. You can start a 14-day free trial with the link in the description. Within the YouTube filmmaking world, there's this trend that I'm sure you've noticed. I've participated in it plenty of times, but it's to always list the camera that the film was shot on after the title of the film. It's kind of just like the meta now. I think because so many of us are interested in cameras that we like seeing what the film was shot on, and it'll often help that film perform a little better. But this project has just further reinforced my own belief that a camera is the least interesting part of your film. Now that's definitely saying something, because this project was shot on an Arri Alexa Mini, It is the nicest camera I've ever touched in my entire life. That is all thanks to Village Cine Rentals, who was so generous to provide us essentially any gear we wanted for this film. They drove out from St. Louis, they lent a hand. They were amazing. Highly recommend them. But they lent us this Arri Alexa, and they also lent us a full set of Cooke Mini S4s. But I would attribute the look and the style of this film so much more to the lenses and the lighting setup than I ever would the camera. I think the camera should be chosen largely just based off of where the film will live, whether it's going to be shown in a movie theater, on a real streaming service, or just on YouTube. And then it should also be chosen based off of usage. So for example, we had a shot in our film that was from the passenger footwell of the car, and there's no way that the Alexa built out would have fit where we needed it. So for that shot, we just used Shaffer's FX3 with a fisheye lens on it and got the shot. I do think that shot stands out and looks pretty obviously different than all of the other shots on the Alexa, but I don't think that's because of the FX3. I think that's because of the fisheye lens that was on it. It's that lens that's far more responsible for that difference in look than it is the camera. And this was really reinforced to me recently because Surae sent me their newest Iron Star anamorphic lenses, and I have never seen an image come out of my FX3 like I am seeing from those lenses. So that's kind of a side note. I'm going to make an entire separate video about those, but I have just been so stoked and so blown away at the images those lenses are producing. It really was a good reminder to focus on lenses far before you focus on the camera. For me, at least, lenses and lighting provide the look. The camera is far more just about logistics, with the only exception being if you're changing formats entirely. If you're changing from digital to film or to DV tape, that's obviously going to change drastically. Ultimately, this film was just a great reminder that serious ideas can come in silly packaging. I have a tendency to lean towards making things that I want to have a huge emotional impact and be very dramatic, but sometimes you gotta just make something dumb. You gotta make something silly. And in this case, that didn't mean that it couldn't also have an emotional impact or meaning behind it. It was very whimsical, very silly, and yet still has a message and some feeling and heart behind it. And some of my favorite things of all time follow that same structure. My favorite movie is Where the Wild Things Are, which deals with very serious themes. It has an extremely sad undertone to the entire film, but it's built around this very whimsical, fantastical world that at first glance you would think is just a fun kids movie, but it actually addresses some very serious themes and emotions. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed the film. If you haven't seen it yet, I'd encourage you to go give it a watch. Let us know what you think. Shaffer and I worked super hard on it and could not have done it without all of the people that came together to make it happen. So thanks as always for being here. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you soon.